Uncle Jinxx. Uncle Jinxx is an evolution of a whole bunch of names they used to call me. First, my mother used to call me Derrick. You understand? From there, I got names like a Slick Rick. I got a Ricky J. You know, the last poets they called me Subway. Jay Spoller called me Absalom, which was the father of peace. You understand? The names just keep on coming. I call myself Decatur St. Jenkins because I used to live on Decatur Street since 1958 up until 2015. I lived on Decatur Street, so I call myself Decatur Street Jenkins. People around the world, they call me Decatur St. Jenkins because they didn't know no better. You understand? I'm a gangster from Bed-Stuy, the land of do or die. You understand? I had a bunch of names. Matter of fact, I probably forgot a few names, but all of them falls under the umbrella of Uncle Jinxx. I went to Five Towns College, and one of the first assignments they gave me was to write the most memorable moment I've ever had in playing jazz. So I wrote my report, and he gave me an A+ on my report. It was about playing at the John Coltrane Memorial at St. Gregory's Church on Bedford Avenue. On Brooklyn Avenue. As a stocky black guy at that time, back in 1964, they gave me the bass fiddle, the big bass fiddle, and I didn't know what the hell to do with that instrument until my mother used to punish me and send me to bed about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and I would have my AM transistor radio underneath the pillow, and I was going through the station, and I came across a jazz station. I didn't know at the time, but he kept using the word jazz, and I hear that big bass fiddle that I was playing. I heard it all in the music, so I started listening. To the music. I was fortunate enough back in '67 to get instructions from a man by the name of Reggie Workman who played bass fiddle for John Coltrane. Now, John Coltrane was my idol, my mentor, and now the bass player for his group is giving me bass lessons. Being in New York, we suffered a severe racism and segregation even in the music. So when I got to the music, the civil rights movement was all over the jazz, and there was such thing called avant-garde, which was the black jazz, music ahead of its time. You know, so I got into that, and horns were screaming, strings was yelling, people were screaming of freedom now. You know, understand? Black power. You know, like I said, that was like a '67 for the school, but for me, it started '64. They was chasing me all over New York City, trying to get me out of them white schools, and I grew a little bitterness. They were trying to pump intimidation into me, and sometimes the intimidation worked. I got scared, so I fell deeper and deeper into my black music. It wasn't really until about '78 when a neighbor of mine named Daoud Jamali, he asked me, did I ever hear Bob Marley? And I told him, no, I never heard of Bob Marley. Mm-hmm. And he said, man, you got to listen to some Bob. And round about 78, 79, I started getting into Bob Marley. And every word Bob Marley said was true. Every word was like revelation, was like the Bible. And he's coming from a black region of the world, which I never knew, because before Bob Marley, I was really stuck in New York City. To tell you the truth, I fell in love with the bass fiddle, but since I started putting together jazz groups from about 1966, 67, I had to write the music out for the entire band. I had to write for the horns, I had to write for the piano, and at the time, I had to sit down to the piano and learn how to write for the piano. You understand? And that's how all this music arrangement and band arrangement started for me. You know, music to me, that's like the family I never had. Every time I meet new musicians, it became brother. You know what I mean? And because of that, you know, I've always looked at the music as family. I myself has been adopted, and sometimes I lack a little love from home. That's how I got out into the street gangs. That's how I got into the jazz band. That's how I got very, very good in school, because all those people were my family. I adopted them as my family. You know, and like, hey, full circle, here's Mackie J. And I have to say no more about family when it comes down to Mackie J. One thing about music, you never know who's looking at you or who's listening to you. You never know. In the beginning, it seemed like nobody was looking, so I had to create my own bands. And in the process of me creating my own bands, I started bumping into the real musicians, the professionals, the black leaders in music. I used to play with the Last Poets. Please download anything by the Last Poets. They do things like Niggas Is Scared Revolution, My Jones Is Coming Down. You know what I mean? New York, the Big Apple. You know what I mean? Rotten to the Core. You understand? That's the Last Poets. But I only stayed with the Last Poets for about 6 months, because even though we had about 10 gigs, I never got paid for none of my gigs. There was always shortening. There was always putting shortening in the bread. As a jazz musician, put shortening in it. You know what I mean? You never got your money. Never looking for money. Never had money. Matter of fact, today I'm still fighting a war on poverty. You understand? But like, when I got to my junior year in high school, my drummer, Freddie James, he said, D, I got somebody, I'm bringing them by the basement. They were always practicing in the basement of my house. And he says, he wants to meet you. Lo and behold, he brought James Spaulding, a very great blue note jazz artist, to the basement. And he didn't even bring his saxophone. He played alto saxophone, he didn't even bring it. He just came to listen. You understand? And as we played one tune, a tune that I wrote called Jinxx Jive, you know, he says, man, I like your music a lot. I asked him, I said, Spaulding, I said, is this jazz? He said, hell yeah, man, you writing jazz, that's jazz. And from that point on, he took me on the road with him. I went to Left Bank Jazz Society in Baltimore, Maryland. He took me into the East, 10 Claver Place, which is one of the biggest music halls for black artists in Brooklyn. And I met people like G2 Wausi, great man, you understand? All the big bands. Let me tell you about the most memorable moment that I played. It went like this. Everybody in the band was a John Coltrane a sideman, except for me. I came in at the last moment. James Spaulding said, we need a third bass player in the orchestra. I want you to play third bass. Jimmy Garrison was John Coltrane's bass player. He was in the band. Hakeem Jami, I never knew who the hell he was, but he was in the band. And then it was third bass, me. Nobody knew me. Everybody in the band was a John Coltrane sideman. Man, that was the wildest moment in my life, man. I swear to God. The music was so hard, people folded up their little folding chairs and moved back 3 rows. The music was so powerful. You understand? And all I wanted to do when it was over was to put the cover on my bass fiddle, because it was madness, you understand? So the boss came over and said, Jinxx, we ain't got no money to pay you. Well, I'm used to that. Yo, I ain't never been paid. You understand? He says, but we got 100 tabs of LSD that somebody told me if I gave it to you, that you'd probably make more money than everybody in the band. So this was your payment. But I used the United States Navy as my drug rehab. But when I came out the Navy, things were real bad for jazz. So I skipped it, because hip hop and rap was here by 1978, 79, and they were doing all the hollering and the screaming. You know, New York, big city of dreams, and all of them songs that was in protest. But jazz was a thing that you had to be quiet about, because it was a dangerous music now. You can set the crowd on fire, make everybody just turn into a lynch mob, a riot situation. And so I chilled and just watched what was going down. I think the thing that satisfied me most was Bob Marley's music in the 80s. You know what I mean? I started to listen to it, then I said, you know what? I wonder what it's like to start playing it. And then when I started playing it, I found another love, or one love, in the music. Something I never had before. I had another outlet now to channel my anger and hate. Africa Unite. You understand what I'm saying? Tunes like that started getting very, very close to my spirit, my soul. He told me, he says, if you want a hit, if you want a #1 hit, you gotta write your song that sounds like the #1 hit. You understand? Whatever it was, form that. What happens here is that we're losing spirituality. So therefore, when the writer picks up the pen, lots of times he's not thinking about his soul. He's not thinking about his heart. His music is in a genre of a booty call music. You understand? If he plays and the women don't, drop their drawers or give him what he wants, you understand that he's not going to put it out there. You understand? So he's lacking of spirituality. We got children that are still being born and grown. They have to listen to proper stuff. When I was a kid, we had tunes like Mary had a little lamb, okay, well that was from the fairy tales and all of that stuff and that. But today, we got to write black fairy tales. We got to write songs with spiritual substance. You understand? We got to teach people that 1 + 1 still equals 2, and not 1 + 1 equals 5 billion, 6 billion. Spirituality. Look at Bob Marley's music. Bob Marley lyrics always lend one line to the scriptures, and the scriptures brought in the old people, the young people, all generations. They all can relate. The music that we've been listening to just last night, I can't believe it, man. Quote unquote, make me water. We talking about orgasm. We talking about, and then you got the other races that we've been fighting against and trying to get. They talking about pumping to the rear, in the rear. They want something in the rear. Back in the day, like you said, when they speak of, and they use terms, hidden messages, but they were speaking for a nation. They were speaking for a population of people. Today, they lost that. They're talking individualists now. He and the girl, wanting to get this one girl. We got a nation. We got a world out here to deal with. You talking about this one girl? We losing it. We don't speak in reference to the populace. You understand? I'm right now even going beyond that, but looking at the universe, going to another planet. There may be other beings on another planet. So we got more than earthlings to talk about now. But pop music is so far behind because they got so much bullshit money stacked up into the banks that they're not even thinking about nobody but themselves. It don't go but so far. You understand? Okay, I would invest my time into songs like Bob Marley's One Love and songs that would bring a mixture of people together. You understand? Those are the important songs. Those are the important lyrics. And if you don't have any lyrics in your music, the title. Bring in a decent title that's going to incorporate more than just one person, more than just one people. One people sometimes is good, but we don't want to stay there. We want to incorporate many people, as many people as we can. Like I said, the problem is right now trying to get the Christians, the Jews, trying to get the Arabs, the Buddhists, trying to get universal consciousness. Universal consciousness, like Alice Coltrane was going. Don't just settle for your one nation. We're talking about a music with no boundaries. Music of all nations. Because just like our Creator, He's the creator of all. And that's what the music should be. Regardless of what you're saying, make it say something for everybody.
Right.
The new millennium came in. I think my mother died in 2005. And at that time, disco. I used to produce a discotheque parties. We had hundreds and hundreds of people come out and party with us. Well, that was all behind me. But I started formulating thinking, sitting back thinking, wow, I wonder if I can get a production of conscious people. You know, this is something that I've been thinking about, and that's basically where Maggie comes in. Right now, I'm in the beginning stages of trying to get out of New York City, trying to get to more black communities like Jamaica, Nigeria, Kenya, Guyana. Right now, Guyana, you dig? I don't know how many black people in Guyana, but it seems like there's a large black area in Guyana that I really haven't been associated with Mackie J for a decade or half a decade. It's much less, more like about a year or a year and a half. And at that point there, I wouldn't throw all my ideology at him. You know what I mean? Allow him to nurture himself. He's already been started long before he met me, and that's what we need to hear. That's what we need to see. Behind the scenes, I might introduce something to him, but that's only behind the scenes. I thought the music was good, very good. I liked it a lot, but at the same time too, I saw room for me to write a few lines, not lyrics. Maggie handled that rather well. Bass lines, trying bass lines. If that bass line didn't work, well, don't worry, I got another one. You understand? And the reason why that is because when you keep your music simple, you understand, there's many ideas. If you make your music complicated, you done used up all your ideas in one song. It's hard to do it by yourself, but two heads, I believe, is better than one. You understand? And Mackie J says, hey, I think you got something. And I say, hey, Mackie J, I think you got something. And the two heads are coming together. You know, and this is what's going to happen. It's going to be production, producing, and moving forward in the world. Okay, at my age, I'm over 70 years old. You understand? Where am I going? So it's time to settle down. You know, pick your company, pick the people that you be around with. You know, and Ting Tough Camp is what it is. Ting Tough Camp seems to be a direction that I can follow through in. Like I said, where am I going? I'll be an early tombstone in a minute. So let's follow Ting Tough Camp until that day has come. I'll tell you the truth. We did have some fallouts, but I can't remember exactly what went down because so many wonderful things have come out of the relationship since then that it's hard to really remember anything negative, anything bad at this point. You know what I mean? It looks like a sunshiny day. Things moving forward looks bright.
Alright, I'm ready now. Yeah. So myself and Uncle Jinxx just wrap up the interview, man. You know what I mean? Enough love. Yeah, man.
To be
Continues. Uncle Jinxx. Money muscle. Yeah, man, that's it. Great interview, man.
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of good.
Started from here. From tonight.